fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back to the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Mr. Joe Goldberg is in the house.
I'm in the house again, having some holiday cheer.
Are you still eating or are you drinking now?
I am eating cookies and drinking Mountain Dew.
Oh,
Diet
okay.
Mountain Dew. So
Diet.
it's okay. It's
At
all
this
health.
point.
Yeah. It's a sugar cookie. But hey, gotta have some. Can I have some lasagna and a Diet Coke, please? Yeah. Can I have a stack of M&M cookies and a
You've
Diet
been
Mountain
eating
Dew,
M&Ms
please.
and cookies and...
I'm in a sugar stupor.
Yeah. Well,
I'm still circling from last
you
time.
were in a stupor anyway, and then add sugar to it, it's even more stupider.
This mainline. This is the season of mainline. Just go for it. Give up.
Hey, guess what? We've got an incredible guest this time. You know, his name's Jason Bourne.
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks just like him.
No, it isn't.
No.
Oh. Okay. What is that? Oh, T.D. Donnelly. Mr. T.D. Donnelly. He's written a book called Year of the Rabbit. Well, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, isn't that nice? Yeah. Well, hopefully you say that at the end of the show.
Yes. We'll give his feedback, his speaking feedback.
Like what you were a screenwriter, right? And so Hollywood, all the success and fun and partying and all the Diddy parties you went to and all the stuff. and now here you are, total turn, and you write a book.
Yeah, well, I mean, so there's several answers to it. So let's start off with the most practical answer. Last year, there was a Hollywood writer's strike. The Writers Guild of America, of which I am a proud member, went on strike. And for 6 months, we were locked out of the studios. And I was told in no uncertain terms that I was not allowed to write movies or television shows. But they didn't tell me I couldn't write a book, which gets to the other part of it, which is screenwriting is, listen, I love it. It's an amazing field. If you can get into it, it's a knife fight in a phone booth every single day. It is highly competitive, but amazing the audience that you can reach when something you write comes to fruition. That said, I've been a professional screenwriter for 29. I'm going on my 30th year as a professional screenwriter with no day job. The number of projects that I have written, that I have slaved over, that I have spent months and sometimes years working on, and a total of 8 people have seen it. Two development executives, senior vice president, head of the studio, and a few agents. Those are the only people that have ever seen that project. It was going, everything was great, and then suddenly it fell apart because Angelina Jolie has a competing project, or because the genre taste of the new studio head has changed and he doesn't want that anymore, and so on and so forth.
8 people. Wow.
Sometimes.
That's like one of Joe's.
Yeah, that's my book. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And my readership.
No, it
The
means,
size of my family.
it means that for 30 years I have all of these projects I've worked so hard on that are just sitting there, ready for their stories to be told. And I was just like, well, it's about time I started turning some of these into novels. And Year of the Rabbit was the first one.
So why this subject? Why this type of writing? You know, like this whole genre. Like what about it do you like?
When I was growing up, very common question. I'm Gen X. I'm a Gen Xer, a child of the 80s. People would always ask, well, you know, who's your favorite superhero? And my answer was James Bond. Like, I was like, that was my guy. That growing up, watching, you know, the Connerys on TV with my dad, watching, you know, the Roger Moores in the theater. I just loved it. And they were like, he's not a superhero. I go, yes, he really, really is. In every sense of the word, he's a superhero. And what I loved about it was that he's just a person. He's a psychopath, but he's just a person. That to me was always very interesting. And that kind of got me into the world of espionage fiction and action thrillers and It's always been one of my favorite things, going right up to the modern day where we have the John Wick movies, which are talk about a superhero, highly stylized, completely unbelievable at a certain level, but there's no capes, there's no radioactive spiders. I really do love that you can make it feel just grounded enough that a person, if they want to, can really immerse themselves in your world.
So where do you get your ideas from for this type of a book? 'Cause obviously it's not like you're a previous CIA or, espionage kind of agent and stuff like that, right? So,
no, that's true. The first screenplay I ever sold, I sold in 1995. It was called Thought Crimes, and it had a fairly spy-worthy angle to it. It was about a young woman who was in a mental asylum who was suffering from chronic schizophrenia. She had thousands of voices in her head all the time, yelling, screaming, talking to her. And she had been in this mental asylum since she was 14 years old, and she was now in her early 20s, and suddenly a man comes in and takes her out, and she wakes up the next morning in a farmhouse in northern Vermont, and suddenly all of the voices are gone. A decade of mental illness completely wiped out. And he explains to her, well, you were never insane to begin with, you're telepathic, and the voices in your head were the minds of everyone within a square mile of you. I work for the NSA, and we're going to teach you how to use your power, and you're going to use it for us. It was in a bidding war. There were 3 bidders, and when it sold, the first thing the studio did was they got me in touch with somebody who had worked for the NSA and somebody else who had worked for the CIA. So right from the get-go, when I started this process, I was talking to people, I was given resources of people that had been in that business. And I love ex-spooks. They're so fun. They know how to tell a story. You know what I mean? They've led such interesting lives, and their insights into human behavior and character. It's just absolutely fascinating. And from that moment, I was hooked. And for a while there, I wrote a lot of action thriller type stuff. And so that's always been a strong draw for me.
So how do you create your characters? Like where do you get them from? Are you getting them from people you know, maybe from you yourself? Where does that come from?
Well, let's take Malcolm Chaucer, for example. He's the lead character in Year of the Rabbit is Malcolm Chaucer. Malcolm Chaucer is the world's greatest interrogator. Malcolm Chaucer is also a deeply broken man. He had suffered torture for 8 years at the hands of a North Korean madman before he was finally released one day. And he suffers from something called CPTSD, that's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It means that he has constant hypervigilance, where the brain's danger tripwire is always on. So he is noticing his peripheral vision is exceptionally acute. He is noticing everything. Sound can really, really bother him because he's hyper acute, and it manifests in his case as being the perfect human lie detector. Every twitch of your face, every sweat gland, every hair that rises, he notices every single bit of it, and he turns that into kind of a map for human behavior, human emotion, human truth or falsity, so to speak. That character came from a project that I worked on, which was about a real person, the most successful U.S. Army sniper in American history, I believe, by at least one metric. His name was Nick Irving, and in 2009, during the surge in Iraq, he had over 50 confirmed kills in a single 100-day tour, which is an insane number. And getting to know Nick, I noticed that he had PTSD. There were some issues, like nothing like the character that I'm describing now. But I always thought it was fascinating watching this really articulate, really smart man who served his country so well, and how he was able to deal with this PTSD. It wasn't crippling him. It wasn't defining him. It was simply part of who he was, and watching him deal with that, I thought was absolutely fascinating. And I was like, why do we not have a hero, a character like that? Which is really interesting to me, because when Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote Sherlock, he did not know anything about modern human psychology, right? But then you got Moffat over in England puts out the TV show Sherlock, and they posit Sherlock as basically being autistic, having certain hallmarks of autism. And what that did for that character, not only modernizing him, but it made him really instantly relatable. We could see all of the hallmarks of Sherlock's genius through a lens that we now kind of understand in a way. It made it more relatable. The Agatha Christie movies that have been out recently, right? They propose that Hercule Poirot has OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and that the imperfection of the fact, the disruption of the world vis-a-vis a murder is the thing that he couldn't stand and needed to fix. For Malcolm Chaucer, PTSD, CPTSD is his superpower. It's a real world thing that people suffer from that gives him an ability that is beyond what most of us have. I love that because I have a daughter that is on the spectrum. She's not very autistic, but a little bit, and she loves Sherlock because finally there's somebody a little bit like her that speaks to her and isn't a victim, but is a hero in a story, and I absolutely love that.
So do you write with that kind of theme in mind when you put Malcolm together?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. For Malcolm Chaucer, I wanted to make sure that I was true to the condition. That anybody that had suffered that, and trust me, there are a lot of readers of spy fiction. A lot of them are vets, and they know you have to be careful to pass that smell test because they know what PTSD is. A lot of them have had it. A lot of them have friends that have it, and I wanted to be, first of all, and second of all, I wanted to explore what that meant, what it meant to go through life with a different perspective, with maybe a little extra burden on your life, maybe a little extra burden on your soul, your heart, your day to day, but also you see the world differently, and different isn't always bad, right? Different can be very interesting. Different can give you certain advantages in certain circumstances. So that was important for me.
Did you get yourself tortured and beaten so that you could get really into the character?
No. I mean,
friends.
I'm not a method writer.
Well, that's just checking, you know.
If you want me to, I could
No,
put a crowbar here with your name on it.
There is I have talked for a long period of time to Joe Goldberg, and many people consider that torture.
There you go. Thank you. Truth is out.
No, listen. I did my research in some of the scenarios that are in the book, enough to know what would work and what wouldn't. I'm very, very careful when you're doing a story about an interrogator, about a person that will hurt people to get information to some degree, even though his ethos is to do the least amount of harm because he had been so harmed himself. His ethos is to hurt the people that he has to get information from the least that he possibly can. Nonetheless, I wanted to do that. I wanted to be very careful about how I did that. I wanted not to descend into glorification of torture. I didn't want to get too terribly graphic about that. I wanted to pick and choose the moments. And in particular, one of those things you learn, leave something out of the equation. Don't give people a recipe for what they can do, right? So in some of the scenes, there's purposely information that is left out. So if someone were to a sick puppy out there wants to try some of this, most of it will not work.
Yeah, but you come from a visual world of movies and TV, and even in the torture stuff you're talking about, a lot can be done visually to imply, but you have to put it on paper now.
Yeah.
How did you transition your natural tendencies of visual writing into the book writing?
In that sense, I don't think I changed at all. I think I just, look, you guys write novels. Alan, you write true crime stuff. And to a screenwriter, what you guys do is cheating. It's not fair. It's not right. And I don't like it that you're allowed to write the character's internal state and what they're thinking. I'm not allowed to do that. You can write 90,000, 100,000 words. I'm limited to basically 23,000 words is about the longest screenplay I can write. So for me, the visual language of my descriptions, that stays. That keeps on going. For me, what I had to unlearn or to learn in a different way was how to jump into the interiority of character, the interiority of being inside a person's head when I wrote, where everything in my training is you can't do that in a screenplay. You have to imply it. You have to suggest it. You have to have just the perfect line of dialogue that tells us exactly what that person is thinking without exactly telling us what that person's thinking. That, for me, is the challenge.
So what's the premise of this story so that people can know what they're going to get when they pick up the book?
Sure. Year the Rabbit is I think the best way to describe it is it's the closest source material would be 3 Days of the Condor in a little bit. It's about Malcolm Chaucer, the world's leading interrogator, who is hired to interrogate a witness to the murder of a Korean national, matter of fact, the son of a Korean billionaire. He performs the interrogation, and the answer comes back that the person who killed this young man was his ex-wife, Tempest MacLaren. Tempest is an assassin, so it makes sense that she might have done this. But he is suddenly racked with guilt because he realizes, oh my goodness, somebody is going to go and try and kill my ex-wife. What do I do? And he breaks his oath and tries to give her a little bit of warning. And before you know it, not only does North Korean assassin attempt to kill her, but 2 more assassins show up trying to kill him. And from there on, it is him basically running for his life in New York City, trying to stay alive long enough to, A, find her, because there is no better life insurance policy than your ex-wife who has killed more men than prostate cancer, and stay alive long enough and use his particular set of skills to tell truth from lies and figure out why everyone suddenly wants to kill them and what this has to do with the mysterious Year of the Rabbit.
Throughout this book, how do you write your action scenes or violence, the thrills? Do you exaggerate some, or do you write it true to form? Like, how do you handle that?
It's really tough for me to say, but I think people have said that the prose is very snappy, it's very, very sharp, very, very real. It feels highly visual, and yet it is clearly not real. It's hyper real. We're stepping a little bit outside of. I would say that unlike the Le Carré and things like that, this is a little more Mission Impossible. This is a little more Bourne, slightly stylized, slightly heightened reality in terms of action scenes. But I come from Hollywood, so I love a good battle. I love a good chase scene, and I especially love it that for a lot of it we're dealing with Malcolm Chaucer, a guy who was an agent another lifetime ago, but has since been a torture victim and an interrogator, and physical touch causes him pain. So this is not he is not Mitch Rapp. He is not a square-jawed killer. This is a guy that if he does have a tool chest for violence, it's got a lot of rust on it, and he has to work that off over the course of the first novel and actually the series.
Hey, when you wrote this, we're going to go back to my visual question. Did you assign in your mind, hey, Malcolm looks like Matt Damon or Brad Pitt or whoever? I mean, did you see the character in your heads as you're writing them as somebody who really existed, or did you just created a whole different type of person?
Weirdly, usually I do. Usually I write with an actor in mind. And in Hollywood screenwriting, that's not uncommon. It's also a trap potentially. But I have never, in my 30 years, ever written a character as this actor and had a studio note where they said, well, clearly that's so-and-so. And they'd never get it right. Never, ever get it right. I've written a character who clearly is Johnny Depp, and they're like, "Oh man, I love that. I think that's Matthew McConaughey, right?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Good call there." They never quite pick who you are, who you're referencing. But the truth, Joe, is that no, I didn't, because somebody came up to me and said, "Who is going to?" I mean, obviously, you're already in Hollywood. When this gets made as a movie, who is going to play Malcolm Chaucer? And I had just this deer in the headlights blank stare because I realized I have no idea. And now I have an idea of who it is.
Joe Goldberg.
But I didn't. Well, I mean, clearly Joe Goldberg, except
overweight Jewish guys from Iowa for the best.
Joe is such a Chicago guy. I couldn't put him in a New York movie. It's just not possible.
As long as I can find the bagel shops, I'd be happy with it.
There you go.
That's all they actually have is my food. Cookies. Well, I find that interesting, actually, because I actually assigned, I said, my God, this is Brad Pitt. This is Kunis. This is Harvey Keitel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I had to see the face. You just read my book, Demon Harvey Keitel. All right, so that's just.
That's great for Damon. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so that's who I saw as I wrote it. I'm not exactly sure I could write it.
Well, who's Bridger?
Doesn't that be
if I
who's
ask.
Bridger?
Yeah.
Original Bridger is the guy from Burn Notice.
Oh yeah, Jeffrey. Yeah.
Jeffrey, whatever his name, or Jake Gyllenhaal originally.
Got it. Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah. But I had to have those faces, and they don't have to be famous actors for me. I just had, like, I'm writing a non-espionage book, and I know who the main character is. I downloaded her picture. I got to know. So I need to see it to be able to say it for me.
See, for me, it's almost the other way around. What I need to do is I need to hear the voice. For me, the voice and the attitude of the character is more important than the way they look. When I teach, I have a couple courses that I teach in the writing realm. And in one of them, I talk about casting your script or your story. And it's exactly what you're talking about, Joe. It's like, who do you put in there? But I tell them, I said, do not cast visually. Cast for what they sound like. Cast for their attitude, for their approach to life, how they attack everything. And feel free to cast in a completely different way. Like, there is nothing saying you can't make a 18-year-old Latino boy have the voice of Rosie Perez. You can absolutely do that, and that's going to be a very interesting character. You can do people that you wouldn't expect, and their voices are going to be so different because you're kind of casting against type, and that's a big deal for me. I don't want people to exactly see me coming. I want the characters to feel fresh and to surprise people from time to time. That's something I love doing.
See, I agree. I just look at it from the persona point. So if you say Harvey Keitel, you see the face, you hear it, he has a way to talk, you know those words, and even all these other people. So it's not as if it's just a picture on the wall. It's the entire persona package, the way they move, the way that type of thing. I need to start somewhere. That's for me.
No, I don't disagree. I don't. For me, yeah. Weirdly, Malcolm Chaucer and Tempest, the two leads, I know what they look like, but they're not a famous person. They're not, and they're not even somebody from my life. Do you know how sometimes you have a dream and there's somebody in the dream and you're like, I've never met that person before, and the reality is yeah, you absolutely have met that person. At some point, you met that person. You stored that image in your subconscious somewhere. And boom, they're there to be a background character in one of your dreams. That's what these characters are in this story. I think there's probably, it may well be that because I was, for the first time, writing a novel instead of a screenplay, I purposely didn't want to picture any of the stars that I've, used in the past, that I've written for in the past. I wanted to make sure that I was making a clean break, and I was really embracing this form by not doing that. So maybe that's a mistake. Maybe that's something I won't need in the future. But I thought that was a good thing to do for me.
I agree. I got it.
So what do you hope people get out of the book when you write it? Like with The Year of the Rabbit, is there some sort of subtext or meaning or some sort of thing you want people to understand underneath the entertainment?
I mean, the honest answer is that first and foremost, I just want people to have a rollicking good time. I just want them to be reading late at night, well past the hour that they should. And they can't quite put it down, and they just have to get through it. And at the end of the book, they're like, wow, that was a fun ride. I mean, to be honest with you, with everything going on in the world right now, and people have a lot on their plates, and I just want to give them a few hours where they don't have to think about any of that, and they can't think about any of that because they're sucked into this story that I'm talking about. Beyond that, yes, there are definitely themes in the story. very much the story is like a lot of good spy stories. It's about who can we really trust in our lives? What does it mean to put your trust in someone? What does it mean to be vulnerable? And in to a large degree, found families, like the nuclear family is quickly becoming a thing of the past, and people in this day and age are starting to have to some degree, construct families with combinations of very close friends and people that are deeply meaningful in their lives, and they're kind of creating found families out of that. That is a lot of what is going on in Year of the Rabbit.
So what's this process of writing this book done for you?
Oh, it's been a blast. Listen, anytime you've been doing one thing for 3 decades, I'm not going to say it gets stale, but it doesn't surprise you the way it used to, I would say, is what it is. And this process has been fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I loved writing this novel. I got it. As a screenwriter, you know that you have your lane, right? You're gonna write this script. You're gonna be talking to the director. Sometimes you're talking to the actors. Sometimes you're definitely always talking to the producers and the studio about it. But at a certain point, they're gonna take it away from you, and it becomes their thing. In this one, I'm the writer. I'm the director. I'm the actors. I'm every part of the process. And you can ask Joe. I am not shy about it. I would love to be fill all the positions of the crew. I got no problem with that. I'm not shy about wanting to do all of it. It's been a real blast. And there's something like I said with Screenplay. One of the movies that I wrote was Sahara, which was a Clive Cussler novel that was 193,000 words, and we had to turn in a 20 that had the feel of 193,000 words. How do you even begin to do that? How do you have something that approximates the same story? And the answer is that screenwriting is, if novels are epic poetry, screenwriting is a haiku. That's all you have. And being able to have the freedom where I'm no longer so straitjacketed by that very limited word count, where I'm not caught up in the fact that I can't describe a character's internal state. Suddenly I can do all of that. It's been, love it. And going forward, I'm writing a project right now. It's got a pretty heavy NDA right now, so I can't talk about it. But in the Hollywood system right now. But I can tell you for sure, I am not going to be stopping writing these novels. I absolutely love it.
Me and everybody else who writes a book, a lot of people say they watch Netflix, they go, "Oh, my book's better than that." So the age-old question is, should they even try to do something with it, write a treatment, send it out? I mean, it's a hard world, and what's the story? Should people just put their books and move on, or should they try to do something else with it?
Here's the thing, right? There is, one by one, the gate-kept media formats have been falling by the wayside, right? I mean, it used to be that if you wanted a record deal, you have to go to Columbia or one of the big record companies, right? Now everybody can do it in their garage. Novel writing used to be, go to one of the major publishers. Now there are tons of smaller publishers. There's tons of people that are going the indie route and publishing it themselves. Kindle has really democratized that process. But movies and television are so expensive to make. That democratization just isn't coming. And because of that, it is still a very walled community that is very hard to get over that wall and get into that world. I will say that Hollywood's appetite for great material and great stories is ever present and is never going to abate, and is constant, because they're constantly looking for the next thing to do. And to a large extent, novels are one of the best media that we have, that we can convert into these great movies, these great movie series, these great television series. I mean, just look at what Mick Herron's Style House series is doing. I would say that I think Amazon Prime is doing a great job with Lee Child's stuff as well. Each one book is an 8-part series. I think they're really crushing it there. So I would say, first of all, don't lose hope. There is an appetite out there, but it's a hard nut to crack. There's no question about it. I would say, listen, if you're writing something that you hope will one day be a screenplay that'll be a movie, my number one recommendation to you is see how tightly you can write it. See how contained you can make that story. Does it all happen in one location? Does it all happen over the course of one night? How can you make it so that a producer could look at that and say, wow, you know what? We could do that for under $10 million. And that's a good bet these days. That's a good way to make a return on your money if you can do that. And I don't think there's any genre out there. I was just speaking at Author Nation in Vegas last month, and a romance writer was asking me that question, and they said, but we don't really do contained stories. What do you mean? Of course you could do a contained story. You could do any story that you set your mind to. Okay, here's what you have. You have a young woman and a young man are being set up on a date, on a ski date or something along those lines. They go to the chalet. They instantly hate each other. We know they're perfect for each other, but how are they ever going to get past their avalanche collapses all around the place, and suddenly they're snowed in. And the entire story happens with these two people that think they hate each other, but secretly are perfect for each other, in this snowed-in chalet until eventually they get dug out. And she was like, "Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, that kind of makes sense."
So, do you see yourself going into a series with this, or doing more with any of these characters?
Heck yeah. You're the Rabbit. It says right on the book cover that it is a Malcolm Chaucer thriller. And there's going to be, listen, Year of the Rabbit is the first one. I have Year of the Sheep is, if you go to, sorry for the plug, tddonnelly.com and sign up for my reader group, I'll send you maybe an email amongst book. And you'll also get Year of the Sheep, which is a little novella about the origin story for Malcolm Chaucer. The second book in the series, Year of the Horse, should be coming out end of January, I think, is when that book is coming out. And listen, I got 12 zodiac signs to play with, so I could easily do 12 of these from the naming convention side of the thing, and that's not even counting titles like The Year of Living Dangerously, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I love this character. I love both of them, actually. Him and his ex-wife Tempest are just kind of fascinating to me, and I'm just enjoying exploring their world and them in it. And I plan on doing a lot of these for sure.
So what are you working on now? Are you working on more of this now, or you got something else going on?
Yeah, I am. I'm my Year of the Horse is with my editor, and Year of the Serpent is the third book, and that I am currently drafting right now. I'm about halfway through that, and looking to see if we can get that on the 2025 schedule as well. Who knows if that'll happen, but that's the aim for sure, is to get that out. Yeah, I have other projects that I would like to work on. But I think the first thing I want to do is make sure that this series, this Malcolm Chaucer series, is launched and launched well. I know that I got a couple of friends that said that, listen, I want to read your book, but I read books so fast, I really try and wait until there are 3 or 4 in the series before I start them. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I think that's great. And I heard about whale readers and all this sort of stuff, but knowing that some of my friends are these people, I'm like, okay. I understand that completely. I'm going to give you what you want. I'm going to make sure that as quickly as I can, I'm going to get at least 3 and enjoy the ride with me.
Well, listen. So let's give out your information now. Do you like people to find you on social media, website? Where do you like readers and fans to find?
Yeah, I think the place I have the biggest presence is Facebook. So if you're a Facebook person, you can look up my author page, which is T.D. Donnelly, or Thomas Dean Donnelly. That's my screenwriting name. Is my personal page there. You can find me there. I'm also T.D. Donnelly on Instagram. And I have a website, tddonnelly.com, tddonnelly.com, and you can sign up and join my reader group. When I have a free giveaway, I'll give you a free story or free chapter, like that. I think they have already gotten the first chapter of Year of the Horse, my reader group. like to give away lots of little freebies, lots of little tastes, and just, kind of let you know how things are going. I mean, I always loved when my favorite authors would do this kind of thing. I loved a little peek behind the curtain. I loved to see, what their lives were like, where they're going, what they're doing, where their head's at, a little bit about the way they think. I'm just fascinated by writers in general, so I try to do the exact same thing for my readers.
Well, fantastic. Now, we'll have all of that up on our website, too, so people can find it, as well as your book, Year of the Rabbit. Again, T.D. Donnelly, thank you for coming on the show.
Alan, Joe, thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.